we should go ahead and get started. I'm going to welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar today. It's our October Strengthening Families Networking webinar. And today we are joined by presenters from Be Strong Families. We're going to talk about Vicarious Resilience, which I'm very excited to learn about. So without further ado, I will share a little bit of about this webinar series. We do this each month. It is an open invitation to folks who are using protective factors or coordinating strengthening families efforts or just interested in learning more. Everyone is always welcome. My organization, the Center for the Study of Social Policy, convenes these jointly with the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. They're not able to join us today because they are all in a training, but normally we co-host and share updates at the end from each of our organizations. We coordinate a different topic and guest speaker for each month, and we always welcome volunteers to present information or suggestions of a topic you'd like us to cover. Just feel free to let me know. And we do have recordings and materials from past webinars that are all posted at the link there. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. And I did want to let you know verbally that we offer the option to get a certificate for participating in the webinar. There's a Google form you can fill out, which is linked. I just put the link in the chat. I'll share it again later in the webinar. You can fill that out to get a certificate documenting that you participated in this webinar today. I also want to welcome, especially today, our ECLink partners. So ECLink is the Early Childhood Learning and Innovation Network for Communities, and the Parent Leader Network is a group of parents from across those 14 communities that are part of ECLink that are currently holding the ECLink meeting is this week. And so we rerouted the meeting to attend this webinar today, and we're happy that you're all joining us. Many of our ECLink partners join us on a regular basis, but it's nice to have them specifically here as part of their convening and to have them all learning about Vicarious Resilience along with us. So welcome, friends. And just a couple announcements about upcoming topics. On November 11th, we will be hearing from the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council about resources that they've developed by and for parents and about some of the other parent engagement work and parent leadership work that the Alliance has been doing. So you can register for that already. I'll put the link in the chat when I stop talking. And similarly, we do a registration link for our December webinar, where I'll be joined by my colleague, Dr. Charlene Harper-Brown, and we'll be talking about some new material we've been developing about racism, anti-racism, and the social ecology. We're really excited to share that with you and have time for discussion for your thoughts on that content. We do it on the second Thursday each month, so go ahead and mark your calendars, and then you can wait and find out what the topic is and decide whether to join each month. Okay, so today we're going to hear about Vicarious Resilience from Robin Harvey and Sarita Sashington, who I'm so thrilled to welcome from Be Strong Families. And then I'll share some updates from CSSP at the end. I know that Robin and Sarita are planning a very interactive time, so get your chat fingers ready. Prepare to unmute and speak if you'd like to, and if you're in a space that allows for that. And without any other business, I'm going to hand it off to Robin and Sarita. Welcome.
Thank you, Kaylin. Hi, all. We're super excited to be here with you today. I am Sarita Sashington, and along with me is the invaluable, fantastic Robin Harvey, and we are going to hold the space for today's webinar today. Thank you. Next slide. Kaylin. All right, so ways to engage. When you're ready to comment, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. And then you'll need to unmute yourself in order to be heard. Please be patient with us. There are a lot of people here who we're super excited to see today. And you may have, we're going to ask you to, to interact with us via chat. So we want to make sure your comments are going to everyone. I think Kaylin just mentioned that, but just give us a moment we won't be able to get to everybody's comments. So we'll get to as many as we can because we love interactive webinars like this. So we can go to the next one. And then Be Strong Families, we're known for creating emotionally safe places. And the way that or spaces, and the way that we do that is through something called agreements. And we have them not only for our cafes, but also for any of our webinars and trainings. So I'm going to go over them really quickly. We're going to ask you to speak from your own experience as you share today in the chat. You can also ask to come on camera with us. We don't mind that, or to speak aloud, to be heard. We don't mind that, but we just ask when you share that you share using I statements. Like my experience has been, this is what I do, and don't talk about everybody else, okay? And then because your experience is your experience and it's pretty valuable. The golden rule, treat other people the way you want to be treated. This sort of wraps up all of those wonderful cafe agreements where you're not judging people, because we can get a lot of that from Facebook, so we don't need to hear. So no judging, no giving advice and all of that, those great things, but just treating other people the way you want to be treated. And then please no multitasking. We're so happy that you decided to be here with us today and hear about this vicarious resilience. And we don't want you to miss one good piece. So stay fully present. And then if you need a minute, feel free to take a minute, okay? And then come on back and join us. And if you agree to these agreements, just put it in the chat right quick for us. Just I agree, okay? So we can make sure that we're all agreeing to keep the space safe. Thanks so much, Robin, for kicking that off. All right, fantastic. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Robin.
All right, welcome again. It's always so exciting to me to watch the chat and watch how this network has spread throughout all of the states. It's just super. So today we're going to talk about the topic of vicarious resilience. And vicarious resilience is half of the training that we do nationwide. And that training is called Vicarious Trauma, Vicarious Resilience. During COVID, Be Strong Families has really done a great job at kind of rounding the wagons and trying to strategize and confabulate on how we can take care of each other. All right, and one of the ways we do that is really keeping the premise of vicarious resilience at the forefront. So vicarious resilience is learning from trauma survivors about how to overcome adversity. This results in positive transformation, increased empowerment, and enhanced empathy. Isn't that a beautiful definition? There was some research done by Alexandra Zareth Canales, and this shows that working through and with traumatized people, helping professionals like you all can gain a first-hand embodied understanding that people can transform experiences, develop more realistic and less idealistic worldviews, gain deeper appreciation for their own lives, and a greater sensitivity to prejudices. So learning from trauma survivors on how to overcome adversity, which results in positive transformation, increased empowerment, and enhanced empathy. I'd like to ask just a general question on how does that sit with you all? How does the premise of vicarious resilience? We all know as members of the helping professional world that we can absorb trauma from other people, that we can show effects of trauma from being around traumatized people. This premise is the flip side of that we can also gain strength. We can also gain positive transformation. We can have that increased empowerment and that enhanced empathy. How does that sit with you all? I'm going to give you a second to answer that in chat, or you can raise your hand and Kaylin can unmute you. To me, this is about, yes, thank you, Susan, for starting that off. Sounds hopeful, makes me hopeful. It brings a sense of hope. Thank you all. It makes me hopeful that we did, child welfare workers, that we can overcome the trauma and still do our jobs. Thank you, Deborah. Linda is offering it's much more optimistic, and I believe it. The researcher, I'll put Rachel. Hi, Rachel. I will put that in the chat for you guys. There you go. Things are never hopeless. Yeah. So this is really about gaining hope and using people's experiences, even the traumatic ones, watching them overcome, watching them do that thing that Be Strong Families talks about in Living the Protective Factors, which is bending without breaking and bouncing back and being like the rubber band and flexible and stretchy. Thank you. Consistent with dignity and worth of each person. Lovely. Lynn offers, this is very true. We're affected by the others around us, good or bad. So the idea of spreading the positive and empowered is uplifting. Thank you.
I don't want to mess up her name. Or their names. It's tomorrow can be fruitful and supportive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin, I see that 2 people have their hands raised. So Mary, I'm going to unmute you first. And
Hi, Mary.
It looks like you might be muted on your own device. And I see we have 2 other hands up. So Mary, are you able to speak?
I don't have any questions. It's stuck. My hand is stuck on this on this laptop. I'm sorry, but just ignore it if you can.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you. How about Vanessa? I will unmute you or ask. You're able to unmute now.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking of the phrase hurt people. And sometimes that tends to be true, but being able to hear from others and how they've overcome is a great example to us all. And it's just nice how people have been saying the putting the positive perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And I see that Susan also has her hand up. So I'm going to unmute you, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Susan Notkin, are you able to unmute yourself?
I'm sorry, I did not have my hand up either. I don't know why my hand is up. I will lower it.
Okay, it happens. It's like in person, you go to brush your hair and the person says, oh, did you want to speak? And it looks like Arthur has his hand up. I'm going to unmute you, Arthur, as well. And if you mean it, jump in.
Hi, Arthur.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, same thing here.
That's okay. I think that they're the same Arthur that wrote in the chat, and I really like this. Somebody offered hurt people, and Arthur offered, yep, healed people, heal people as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. If you have
Love
a little
it.
hope, use it to help you keep faith and change. Yeah, that is the opposite. I love this picture on this slide. It's one of my favorites that we offer because it's just a desolate, like concrete path there. And there's a beautiful flower growing through that crack. And that is a perfect depiction of vicarious resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Taking something beautiful from something that was traumatic. Does anybody else have anything to offer before we move on? All right, I think we can forward the slide. So first we're going to talk a little bit about the effects of vicarious trauma and how that feeds in to the premise of vicarious resilience. You can click it again, Caitlin. All right, so what does the research tell us all? I'm going to read all 3 questions, and this can kind of just be the backdrop of a deeper conversation. But before I do those, I just want to read what Linda said because it's quite lengthy. Linda Block just had a conversation yesterday with someone who struggles not to take on all of the negative emotions of others, whereas I don't think I take that on. Though, of course, I'm present and empathetic. So might be a temperament / personality. So might temperament and personality have a big influence on the impact we experience? Yes, it does. We all absorb things around us at different frequencies, at different durations. And some of us can, kind of put that little shield around us. And I can do that to an extent, but I also find that that shield keeps things out or in that, it's not as permeable as I like it. All right, so the effects of vicarious trauma. What does research tell us about it? What have we learned from trauma survivors about how to overcome adversity? And what's the beauty in the midst of it all, in the midst of the trauma? Lucy
says, oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Sarita.
No, Lucy says, taking what has happened to us as our personal testimony to maximize our potential and purpose in assisting others.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? What does research tell us about the effects of vicarious trauma? That it can be just as damaging if the traumatic event happened to you. Mm-hmm. If we don't identify our trauma exposure responses and we don't minister to them, it can be just as devastating. Socially, mentally, physically, it touches all of the domains of vitality.
Deborah said it could be internalized and harmful to health and well-being. Lynn said we carry it in our bodies.
Yeah, we do.
Maureen said it can be passed generation to generation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what have we learned from trauma survivors about how to overcome the adversity?
Linda said those who are more emphatic can have an increased risk of vicarious trauma.
Yes.
Thank you all for participating. Tim says self-care. Linda said connection is key. Stacy, effect on our brains and how they function. Lynn said our protective factors. Christina said recovery isn't linear.
Yeah, those are all really great answers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the beauty in the midst of it? We all have gone through this pandemic together, and it's been very traumatic for some of us. Mm-hmm. What's been some of the beautiful things that have come out of that trauma?
Someone said it's okay to, lost it. Stephanie said it takes one caring person to help you overcome trauma. Caitlin said it's okay to name it and face it. Avoiding it just means it comes out somewhere else. Sandra said connection to those we are working with or for. Linda said inner growth. Heather, sharing in our healing. Darnell says leaning on another and finding common ground. Jalen says being able to connect with those we are working with. Gain perspective. Once we've gone through it, we learn to do it again. Clementina says, knowing we're all in this together. Marisol said, spending time with people you love, understand your value as a person. Catherine said, learn new ways to connect virtually. Crystal says, communities coming together to support each other. Amanda says, slowing down and being present with families. Verticia said, we are not alone. We all have a story. Vanessa, learn new skills, spending more time with family. Latonian, being present with with families. Yeah. So I think I got everybody. I hope I didn't miss anyone. They're coming in pretty quick. Love it.
Yeah.
Maria said the family are great support. Soledad said, miss trauma. You define what you are not willing to contend with. You can also find your strength.
Yeah, that is a beautiful thing. Good. Anybody else have examples of the beauty in the midst of the trauma? Connection we talked about. We talked about, our families being supportive, learning new skills. What else is the beauty?
Robin, I think for me, part of the beauty too is like the growth. Thinking about my own trauma, how I've grown, and it's the growth. I was so happy about the first time that I went through trauma, how I handled it, and then the next time that I had something traumatic happen to me, that I handled it two totally different ways because of the growth in the first one. So Maureen said, we learned what is really important. Vanessa gained experience to help someone else. Yep. Kaylin said, recognizing our own strength and ability to get through something. Emily says, helps you to identify and focus on what is truly important. Lucy said, not sweating the small stuff anymore, prioritizing what is really important. Stephanie said you learn how strong you are. Hey, Burley said setting new priorities. Kim said slowing the pace of the world down. Sarah said new tools available and normalized for connecting with one another. Perla said unity. Maureen said we learn what is really important.
Mhm.
Arthur said learning how to ask for help. Hi, Arthur. I just realized who you were. Lynn said more awareness and mindfulness. And Rocio said self-growth and realizing how strong we are. Danielle said I have a similar experience to what you just shared, Sarita.
Yeah, I love all of these, and they really just remind me of myself. And when I first went through trauma, just like Sarita, you get through it and you get stronger, and then you go to the next level and you get stronger. It kind of is that snowball effect. When you're really flexing that resilience muscle, your resilience gets stronger and stronger and stronger because you're building it through each experience.
Hmm. It's like that muscle, the muscle analogy, right? The more
Yeah,
I use
right.
it, the stronger it gets.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it.
that's really great. Okay. Anybody else want to comment before we move on to the next slide? Nope, one more.
Catherine, oh, we got them coming
Oh,
in. I
great.
love it. Catherine says, this looks interesting. Let me grab it. I've learned that I can only eat the elephant one step at a time, and I get stronger with each bite. um, I don't want to mess your name up. Um, Overcoming trauma allows us to know we have the strength to face a negative obstacle and not allow it to conquer us. Through this trial, we build resilience.
Yes.
Thank you, Tuhita.
I was going to jump in with a
Uh-huh.
comment too. This is Kaylin.
Uh-huh.
Thinking about the muscle analogy, like your muscles get stronger if you are lifting weights with good form.
Mm,
If you're doing it well. But I think
yeah.
sometimes we think just the fact that someone has survived a lot of bad things means they're getting stronger. But if they don't have the right support and guidance with that, it might just be wearing them down more. So it's not just surviving, but how you've worked through it that builds that strength.
I
Oh, I
love
love
that,
that.
Kaylin.
Right? I love it too. It's like lifting weights with good form makes you
That's
only if
right.
you do it with good form. That's good.
And it's an awesome segue into the next slide, because
Mm-hmm.
now we're going to talk about that good form.
So we're now we're going to talk about building vicarious resilience. So we talked a little bit about, the effects of vicarious trauma, but we're going to move into a more positive space, right? Although, learning the beauty was pretty positive because I'm stoked now. I'm like, oh, I'm loving this conversation. So building vicarious resilience, how has other people's trauma helped us to become the person we are today? How has other people's trauma help you to become the person you are today? And we'll give you a chance to answer that. Um, I think for me, when I think about this question for me, it makes me think of that I am much more gracious. I'm much more gracious because I realize that if I've gone through stuff and I've met people who've gone through worse stuff than me, and it just puts me in a place of like, you know what? They probably maybe people say I'm really too optimistic, but that's how I feel. Like it's okay. Maybe they're having a bad day. They're stressed out. They've been through some things. So, all right, what do they say in the chat? I see them
All
coming
right.
through.
Yeah, they are. So we have people saying increased gratitude. Another person offering put into perspective what is really important in my life. It's made
Mm,
me more humble, says another person. It helps me not focus only on my own problems, gives me a purpose to be grateful.
mm-hmm,
Another person says, I watched my parents handle situations well. I learned from them.
mm-hmm.
And yes, humility helps me understand people very different and with varied experiences from me. It made
Yeah.
me more compassionate and understanding. These are all such beautiful answers. Learning self-compassion, so
Mm-hmm.
super important. I've developed more sensitivity and compassion. I'm not alone. It helps me to be patient and more understanding.
Mhm.
Let's see, we got 19.
I saw someone saying something about how to be less judgmental, and I see that popping up again. And I think that's where the graciousness comes from me. It's like, oh, people are going through a lot, and handling a lot. And if I know that I tend to have, if I tend to struggle sometimes, then someone else might also be struggling. And so I try not to take it. Helps me not to take things personally. Exactly, Darnell. You took the words right out of my mouth. It helps me not to take things personally, but to really sort of think about and put myself in the other person's shoes. So that's huge for me.
We had
Thank
some
you, guys.
comments about being a better parent, more
Yes.
open-minded, empathetic, recognizing my kids have their own path to follow. A
Mhm.
lot of people offering that it's teaching them humility,
Yeah.
that they're not alone, be patient and understanding.
I did see one that caught my eye that said, I've learned not to jump straight to solutions, but to acknowledge feelings. And I thought that resonated with me. That resonated with me, definitely. So what are some other practices? So you guys have given some great things. And these are ways that you've learned to deal with, how other people's trauma has made you who you are today. But what are some other practices that help build vicarious resilience that we have not covered, that maybe you didn't hear? What are some practices that we talked about earlier in the conversation about the beauty, right? Some other practices.
I think
So
that
Hida,
one I see here
mhm,
already from Caitlin, it also reminds me not to offer simple platitudes to gloss over other
yes,
people's pain, but instead to hold space for it instead of rushing someone past it.
that sounds like somebody who's been to parent cafes, like a lot
Right?
of them.
Yeah.
Holding space, love it. I
Yeah,
saw some other stuff come up.
yeah, there's reaching out to
Mhm.
community supports for help. That's from Christina. Christina, I'd love to hear about some of those community supports. If you want to throw them into the chat. Catherine is saying self-care is crucial. Yes, self-care for ourselves, but then offering self-care as a solution to other people as well, giving them permission to rest, giving them permission to slow down. Other
Mhm.
practices, my faith and spiritual practices, prayer. Thank you. Simply listening and acknowledging. Heather says a great meditation practice.
Yeah.
Ooh, Alden says reflective supervision. Super helpful. Be Strong Families practices reflective supervision, and I find it necessary when we're
Mhm.
absorbing people's trauma. That reflective practice really helps us to be aware of even the opportunity for vicarious
Mhm.
resilience. Grounding myself
Mhm.
through self-care and communing in nature. I love that. And the people I love. Taking time to fill my life with beautiful things, music, movies, books, outdoors. And I love that, Emily. I was in a terrible funk about 2 months ago, and I was having some reflective time with our CEO, Kathy. And I was so in the molly grubs. I was just like, oh, I'm so unhappy. She's like, you're not unhappy. I was like, no, I am unhappy. I am unhappy. She's like, write down all the things that bring you joy. Like, I don't have any. So that night, I just kind of sat down and sat back and took my notebook and I wrote a list, and it covered 2 pages of really small writing, all the things in my life that bring me joy. I called her back in the morning. I was like, all right, thank you. Yeah, just even bringing those things to my awareness was so super helpful. Yeah, acknowledging our feelings, thoughts, and thoughts of what has happened. Community supports could be anything in the person's community: therapy, churches, schooling, support groups, and other not-for-profits, and parent cafes. If you have a parent cafe community in your town or near you, you should run there.
Yeah. Robin, I'm thinking to myself, Robin doesn't have, look, I said she had to be in a funk because she has Sabrina, her grandbaby, and all those great chickens and
Right.
and fresh
Right.
eggs.
Yes,
I'm sure that made the list.
it did. It did. All right, and let's see. Do you have a
Mindfulness.
favorite feeling chart for
Hmm.
adults that you could share? Does anybody have a a favorite feelings chart. We have one that we use at in a couple different of our workshops. We use one in Living the Protective Factors when we talk about the protective factor of communication, and we use one in a class I just taught this morning, being an agent of positive change. So I could forward those on to Kaylin, who could we can try to get those to you.
You see this one from author says culturally rooted ceremonies and 12-step sobriety programs helps me find ways to give back to others that may be struggling rather than focusing on my own struggles. And
I love
thank
that.
you for that. Yeah, that really does. I think that ties into our last question. How can you incorporate these practices within your organization and work with families? And we do that through parent cafes, greatly through all of the different type of cafes that we offer. Those transformative conversations become pretty important to the work that we do with our and those the agreements we usually practice within our own organization, which helps us to be better for for the families that we serve, and then with the work that we do.
So Jenny here offered something really important. Vulnerability, allowing ourselves to drop that professional stiff upper lip and talk about how hard it is sometimes. Yes, no one's going to get help if we keep that mask on.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So
I think there's freedom. There's freedom in being in vulnerability. For me, I think there's freedom in vulnerability and freedom in being able to share my story or in order to connect with someone else, because everybody's story has value. And we get comfortable enough to share that. We free up so many people who don't think it's valuable to share or have problems sharing. Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense? It's like if I share my story, then I give other people permission that it's okay to, take the guard off. It's okay to be able to share in this space. I think sharing and being vulnerable is like so cool and so important to grow.
And it's a superpower.
It is a superpower. Yes. Just like that. It's a superpower.
Yeah.
Because everybody can't do it.
No. Marine's offering we can't teach what we don't know. So we must build our own protective factors in order to be fully present with our clients. Yes.
Yes.
Marine, I love that. And that is something that Be Strong Families holds on to firmly as we bring our whole selves everywhere we go.
Yeah.
And so strengthening the protective factors in your own family and in your own life only serves to better everybody in your ripple.
Mm-hmm. Missy says sharing.
Yeah, go ahead. No, it's a good one.
I was going to say, Missy says sharing normalizes the struggle. Yeah. And someone else said, I agree that my vulnerability helps so many that I work with. Catherine said, I cry with a client. I'm not ashamed of that. It's like if you go to parent cafes, you cry all the time. I often cry at parent cafes. Sometimes it's just too much. Like this, it's usually stories of hope, like, stories of hope. And there's sometimes stories of people who are going through some things, but more often there's stories of like hope and resilience, bouncing back, and oh my gosh, and connection. Like, yes, I'm not alone. Yes, Marie, you aren't alone. Yes, exactly. It feels just like that. It feels just like that. I do think too, when you talk about incorporating these practices within your organization and families, I think that when we get to the place of being vulnerable, that it also increases our engagement and increases how effective we are in engaging with those families, because then they feel so connected with us. They feel so connected. They feel like part of the family. And then they just begin to, they grow in their relationships, in their families, in their, leadership skills as parents. They just grow. So Sarah said, I've stopped apologizing for my own tears. I now understand it is a sign of empathy. Oh, I love it. Fantastic. Vanessa said, I also learned to leave things at the door, like having a bad day at work, but being present as you walk in the door of your home with your family. Yes, that. Linda says, sometimes when families move on, there's a feeling of loss.
Mhm.
Definitely. That
That's
resonates.
real.
That is real.
That's real.
That is very real. That is very real. Definitely.
So
All
these are
right,
all
so
really good answers. And it's so awesome to be surrounded by a workforce that gets it and that is practicing it. So I would like to spend the last minutes, several minutes here with this last question. How can we incorporate these practices even deeper? Even deeper within our organization and our work with families. Why can't we all have permission to have those tears? Why can't we all have permission to be real and say, yeah, I miss that family? How can we incorporate these practices deeply into our organizations and the way we work with families?
Catherine's exactly feeling so down. And after I have a group, I come away with wind beneath my wings. Don't get me started singing, Catherine, because I will. That drive, and then I have to shut this whole place down. Um, who's this says? Arthur said that drive home used to give me space to unwind.
Yeah,
Sandra says,
Arthur. Let me
yeah.
let me let me talk to Arthur for a second, because Arthur, what I
Uh-huh.
started doing was I go for a walk after work to kind of split up my day. Like when work is done, I take a walk. And then I come home like I'm coming home from the office. Then it's mom.
And I drive. I get in the car after a long day and I drive toward the sunset because I love watching it go down. It's like a whole nut. Like I pull over, I take pictures, and then I come back. Like, because when I leave my bedroom in the morning, I tell my husband, "Bye, honey. I'm just going downstairs, but I have all my stuff. Bye, honey. I'm going to work today. See you later." He doesn't get a kick out of it because he works outside the home, but but I do that, and then at the end of the day, I leave like I'm leaving from work, and I come home. I get a kick out of it.
That's
I
great. I think we
appreciate
all
it.
have to have strategies like that. Lynn said, we have begun starting all meetings with mindful moments. I'd love to hear more about those, Lynn. Arthur is saying, especially now that so many people are working from home. Yes, working from home has become normalized throughout this pandemic. Not sure it's going to go away. I can be feeling so down. And after I have a group, yep, you read that one. The drive home.
Caitlin said, Caitlin O'Brien said that we have to be willing, in response to your going deeper, she
Yeah,
said we have to be willing to let go of how we have always done things, to dig deeper
sure.
into what actually helps our clients and us. So real. Facts.
And I love this one. Allow staff transition time between meetings and clients. Yes, some breathing room. That's great.
I
Heather,
love that, Anna Marie. Thank you. Sorry, go
right.
ahead.
Demonstrating humility. Yes. And I love that, Caitlin O'Brien. That's powerful. We do have to embrace the change. It's challenging because work, home, family, it's all in the same space. Thank you for saying that one.
Missy
Um,
said, Missy said we had a supervisor share with our whole organization that she was starting therapy again. It was so powerful and opened up an entire realm of realness, so necessary for a remote organization to feel actually connected and intimate.
I love
I do want to say too, when we talked about how you so and and people are sharing all the great ways that they do for themselves. I'm just wondering, like, what can you do in your small space to actually incorporate these practices? The being vulnerable is great when we do those things for ourselves, but how do we bring it to work? How does it show up for work for us, and the families that we serve? Because that's equally as important in helping other people to build their vicarious resilience. And I know we only have a few more minutes, so let's see what people are saying before we start to wrap up.
You're
Teresa
no
said being
good.
available for team to decompress. Go ahead,
Yeah, and
Robin.
you're no good to others if you don't have proper rest and focus. Practice what you preach. And if you're in a supervisory position, help your staff practice rest and disconnecting.
Yeah. Like I love the Be Strong Families practices reflective supervision. So we check in with it's a simple checking in with people to see how they're doing before we go into the to-do list. Did you check this off? Did you check that off? It's to really checking in. How are you? What's going on with you? It can also be in your practices. Like one of the things that we do is we're very family focused. So then, even our policies include family time where you can take off for your kids because that's important, right? That family time when you have family events and things that you have to get to. So
I
there
think
are
the other
some.
thing, Sarita, that Be Strong Families does like reflectively is we offer our trainers forum where it's all of our trainers together and we say what the challenges were and what kind of vicarious trauma we may have picked up in that month. And together
Yeah.
we can brainstorm about how to dissipate that. And it's just nice to be in a group of like-minded people and say, this happened to me, and 10 people say, yeah, it happened to me too. And how are we going to address it? I really love that.
Marie said, I love the idea of setting aside time to discuss and highlight our feel-good moments at work just as much as the stressful moments. Those are the ones that matter most for them and for us. Exactly. Let's see. Christina said, utilize praise. Praise parents for the work they're doing. Parents praise. Uh-oh. Rita disappeared. I'll come back to it. Lynn said, our mindful moments that we start with are short meditations, breathing exercises, grounding experiences, gratitude readings, poems, etc. It helps us to be in the moment and be calm and focused. I see. Uh-oh. I practice morning rituals as well. I say affirmations aloud each morning before work in English and Tagalog. Jennifer said we have self-care tips built around the protective factors for child welfare caseworkers, home visitors, and family support professionals.
Do you see this one? Utilize praise. Praise parents for the work they're doing. Parents praise one another and praise the staff. I love that.
That's the one I was trying to find. It disappeared on me.
Yeah.
Great.
That's a great one.
Missy said one group.
With,
Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, we're so funny. We are starting to read the same one. You go ahead.
So one group I work with had staff user guides, and we share what we did for self-care and what we look like when we were checking out. Cool. It was a great way for us to build our awareness and be supportive when we notice stress-related behavior.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, that is a great one. I love it. Hey.
Great. All right.
This has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, it really has. But what I'd really like to do just to round it off, to kind of put a cap on the conversation, is I want you to think of one small but significant step that you can do, starting today to incorporate this. You don't even have to tell us, but I want you to think it in your mind. If you want to share it, great. But one thing you might have picked up today from your peers, from your colleagues, that you can start doing. All right. Okay, Kaylin, I think you can forward.
So we'd like you to join us. We want to invite you to join us. Be Strong Families has daily webinars. We still call them daily, even though we're now down to like twice a month. Well, 4 times a month because we have them in English and Spanish. And so every Friday we have a taste of a different cafe. And this coming Friday, we're having a taste of a more perfect union cafe. And then we're building and rebuilding belonging and recovery with Robin on Monday. And then we have that Tuesday. So the English webinars are Monday and Wednesday. The Tuesday webinars are Spanish for our Spanish speaking community. And so that is Recuperating in Cafes with Sarah Gonzalez. And then just join us. There is a QR code. If you use your camera, your phone, you can take a picture of that and it'll take you straight to our events page. And then I see that Kaylin was kind enough to drop it in the chat for us. So yeah, join us for one of our daily webinars or one of our fantastic cafes. The cafes are held every Friday during lunchtime from 12 to 1:30. It's just a taste of a cafe. But we'd love to have you join us for that. We have a Taste of Recovery Together Cafe next week. So mark your calendars.
Super
All
excited
right,
about that.
next slide. And then join us for an upcoming Bichon Families Workshop. Yay! So we have Vicarious Trauma, Vicarious Resilience. It is a price-based event. So please, we'd love for you to come and join us for that. I'm going to drop in the chat. If you use your phone and go to that QR code, it will take you to our events page. I am going to share here in the chat a registration for the actual straight to the actual training. If you're interested, we'd love to have you and have more conversation around, vicarious trauma and vicarious resilience and how to build that vicarious resilience a little deeper than this. You thought this conversation was good, that conversation is going to be much better. So thank you guys so much for having us today. We really appreciate it. Shout out to Kaylin and Center for Study Social Policy for having us today. We appreciate being able to share this with you. And Robin?
I was going to say, and I appreciate all the great ideas. I saved that chat right away too, so I could take some of these back to my team to see, what we could do to further support each other. Appreciate all of you. And thank you so much, Kaylin, for inviting us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I don't know that people know. Do people know that you can save the chat?
It seems like they might not be able to as participants as opposed to us as hosts and panelists. So I know that when the recording is posted, it always has the chat along the side. I will see if I can also just pull that out as a document and save it. I can't promise that I'll clean it up, but I will try to see if when the Alliance posts the recording and the slides, they can also post the chat, because there were so many great ideas shared here. So thank you, Sarita and Robin. This has been really just so interesting and inspiring to hear about everyone's perspectives on this important topic. And it's nice to take the time. I think we're often so focused on what's the next program we're going to implement, what's the big thing we're going to do, or even the small thing we're going to do, but it's nice to take some time to just reflect on these concepts and our experiences. So really, really appreciate that. I'm going to share a few updates from the Center for the Study of Social Policy from our other work that's all in various ways related. And then all of these slides have links on them. I will put them in the chat, but I'm not great at doing that while I'm talking. So I'll put them in when I'm done talking. And so if you weren't on last month's webinar, it was about Evaluation 2.0 and the work that we are doing along with Mosaic Network and partners at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And so if you want to get involved in that, go to cqihub.com. It's pretty exciting thinking, and we're looking for partners that want to help figure out how to apply it in your state or your jurisdiction. So please check that out if you're interested. The link to the recording of that webinar is there as well, and I will put that in the chat. A couple upcoming events from CSSP. Some of you have been tuning in to these Willis and Friends live stream conversations about early relational health. This month, it's coming up next week, will be about envisioning a relational future within a multicultural society. And I think it should be a really good conversation between David Willis, who's a senior fellow at CSSP, and then Isabel Howe and Joe Waters, who are doing work out in in different communities and giving a lot of thought to how relational health comes into society and is part of how we all work in a multicultural society in particular. So join that if you can. It's always an engaging, pretty quick conversation. I think it's usually a half hour or 40 minutes. CSSP has some events coming up about learning equity and power, a new health equity dialogue from work that CSSP has been doing in partnership with the California Endowment and the Building Healthy Communities Initiative in California. So we encourage you to join that. The first one is next week, and I believe the second one is in November, but I could be wrong about that. But if you go to that website and keep an eye on our newsletters, you will see those dates as they come up. And another webinar we have coming up is about Our identities ourselves, anti-racist guidelines for collecting data on race and ethnicity. Some really interesting work has been going on around how individuals want to be asked about their race and ethnicity and how we can go about collecting that data in ways that give us meaningful insights and that work for the people that we're gathering data from. And exciting news, CSSP is hiring. So if you are a fan of human resources work and equity and really helping to build an organizational culture and reinforce an organizational culture that's inclusive and focused on diversity and equity and justice, please consider applying or share this with someone you know who would be a great fit. That job listing was just posted, I want to say this week. Could have been last week. And we encourage you to share that widely. And those are all the announcements that I wanted to share today. Thank you all for joining us. I will keep the chat open if people want to continue sharing reflections, and I'll put the links in. I'm putting in a whole bunch of links all at once. So that will show up as a huge blob on your chat with the recordings of last month's webinar and all these events I shared. I will go into my document and grab that registration link for the upcoming webinars as well. For our upcoming Strengthening Families webinars, we have one November 11th and one on December 9th. And I hope you will all join us. Thank you very much for being with us today. Huge thanks to Sarita and Robin for your great content and facilitation and energy that you always bring to these conversations. We love it. And I'm really grateful to have this time with all of you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Oh,
Hi all. Thanks for joining us.
And I saw a request for the certificate. I will put that link in the chat again for those who need it. So you can get a certificate that you participated. And I usually send those out like middle of next week so that people have time to fill out that form. So don't get anxious if you don't see it right away.
Thank you, Kaylin.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.